Hey everybody, this is 10 Ton Hammer. We have a special here. I am out in Denver, Colorado, touring Illfonic Studios. Today we have a few interviews going up, and one we have here is with Cliff, one of the artists on Revival here at Illfonic. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris, and what you're doing for the game?
Yeah, Cliff, actually. Yeah, but yeah. So I'm an artist. I'm in environment art right now. So since we're doing a lot of the we're doing the housing first, the exterior city, and the way we're rolling out the game. That's sort of my focus right now. And then, I previously to this, I was actually a character artist, and so that's sort of the skill set I bring. And I've been kind of ramping up onto this side of things. And then, sort of, hopefully, my future goal is to kind of get into some doing the characters and creatures and things like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, very cool.
I always love that kind of stuff, and as we all know from any kind of MMO experience, it's always seeking that next thing, the next thing to fight, the next thing that we can get. So that always excites me. But what I'm doing right now, is I've been working on the estates. So a lot of the very big, fancy, lofty buildings that we're doing for the player housing.
Yeah, when I was looking around too, we got to see a little bit of the statues and that you've been working on too, as kind of your character model experience goes in. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of mentality you have when you go about, creating the statues or infusing this theme, this Lovecraftian theme into the game?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's it's interesting with this game because we're sort of inventing a lot of art style and figuring it out, and especially in this early stage, we're doing a lot of things to kind of hash out what is the visual look of the game really going to be. What are the things that are core to it? The rule of worlds is a term you're familiar with from.
From the forums.
I've heard you say, from the forums, and of course from Revival Cast, I've heard you say that.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, that's central to the art as well. We want to make sure that we're making a world that feels authentic. And so, we are establishing it very heavily in things that are familiar to our real world and sort of a more of a medieval time, as you'll see. But we always want that twisted darkness too. But we don't want that to be ubiquitous. We want that to come from the events and the things that happen, and otherwise it's not as impactful. So, the art style has really been let's get very real with it, and then it's hard with the statues and things like that. There hasn't really been too much of a let's do it like this. It's sort of been more exploratory. Excuse me. Where we have an idea, we know of the gods, the other gods, the outer gods, and so there's motifs that we can play with that bring in elements of the lore, elements of the world, that say, hey, this is a little bit different than what you're used to seeing in something that looks like something you might see in maybe Europe or something like that. So I pull from those themes and try and say, this is something that was made by somebody who views these deities or this religion or in this particular way, because there's going to be lots of different ways of looking at anything, like in a religion, or depictions are different. Different cultures, different even regions will sort of find their own way to create a decorative element or a useful item or something like that that pulls from that kind of I guess I should say. It just pulls from the motifs of what these old gods are in their minds. So it may not always be 100% representative. So that's the way I've been going about it, is thinking of, I guess the summary is, thinking about how people in Philistine would think about these deities, and then trying to kind of engineer some art from their perspective.
That's very cool. Yeah, I feel like a lot of games kind of pick popular motifs and infuse them and change them a little bit. But it seems like not too much thought has gone into, what the character or what the actual NPCs that live in that world might actually think about how things look. It's just so overdone, and I really like that there's a lot of subtle elements to what some of the elements you guys have created and shown already through screenshots and stuff on Revival. Can you talk a little bit though about maybe how do you go about balancing the plain mundane from the really epic and creepy and horror, so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming or too plain?
Right. Yeah. That's definitely one of the things. I mean, one of my thoughts has been I mean, there's certain materials that you have to work with in terms of, and again, we're talking just about housing right now, but I was thinking right at the very outset of this is sort of, there's different materials that are going to be local to a region, and then there's things that are going to be exotic to a region or imported and things like that. So, to the point you're talking about, we want to build this world as if we're not building the world, but the people in the world built the things in the world. And so, sorry, I'm trying to remember exactly the question so I don't get off track. My brain.
Basically, just how are you kind of what's your mentality and how you balance, some of the plain, mundane, medieval, elements with some of the epic fantasy,
right.
Dark magic type stuff.
Well, for that specifically, one of the things that we can that we tend to think about is that a lot of the things that are much more high craft, things that you would see coming out of a civilization kind of at its peak or things like that, have come from ages before. So there's almost sort of like relics, artifacts, buildings that have sort of been rotted out and then renovated now. So there's sort of, a lower technology is sort of coming in and building over some things. And this is specifically with the estates. A lot of like the other housing that we have pulls from a lot more of the very functional stuff, functional materials. Some things have some nice and luxury to it, but it's basically with wood paneling and things like that. But when you're talking with more of the things that's like, wow, how did they make that? A lot of times that could have been, like excavated from somewhere and brought in, or leftover elements from a building from a civilization that's sort of now gone, that had their peak, and then something happens, and then they left these sort of bones that are now built on top of. So sometimes it's just taking cues from that and then sort of redeveloping it. And then I've always just thought about that in terms of actually like mining that, taking these things, and might even quarry out parts of buildings and say, hey, this is really cool, we're going to use it in our building. So thinking about elements specifically for the estates, sometimes coming from different ages in a sense, where it's not all made right here, right now.
Very cool.
But, you have, as a matter of fact, one of the original ideas I was doing for an estate Great Hall was that it was almost like it was a burned out building, but all the old stonework from sort of the main area stayed. And then as you went out, it was newer construction off of that. So they kind of used it and rebuilt on it. So
very cool.
That's one of the ways, is just thinking about it across time, about what things were made now and what things may have been made who knows when.
Very cool. I feel like that's going to add a lot of depth to, even every little thing that people experience. They're, going to see different ages, different eras,
right, yeah.
Everywhere they look.
I think it's important in the world. The world exists across time. That's one of the things that's so cool about our world, is just things to discover from so far back, and it lends a lot of texture to what we do now.
Yeah, I've talked a lot with Adam and Kedron and Chris about how this game is really more about simulating a living world,
exactly.
necessarily than it is just creating, a stage prop for everything right. The world's actually going to be interacted with. So that's very cool.
I actually think about, here in the office, whenever the word game comes up, or we, it's almost like we tense up a little bit, because we want to think about it and say, we're not really creating a game in a sense, we're creating a world. That's, at least on the artist side, for me, that's the way I think about it. And I know that there will be a game playing out in the world, but the world is, that's our main goal, is we're creating a very virtual world to play.
That's awesome. Can you talk about what your favorite thing has been to create, or what has been your favorite thing to create so far, and then maybe what component of the world you're most excited for players to see now or in the future?
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a lot of our world that I can't wait to see, and part of that is the artists in me that really love exploring the settings and developing that stuff and thinking about it, from the big all the way down to the nitty gritty. I'm really looking forward to getting into some of the, like Sky Pass is a cool city region, things with a lot of rivers and natural stuff where you have complex problems that people had to solve to live there. I think those are going to be some really fun things to see for me. In terms of what I've been creating so far, what's been funnest, what I enjoy doing most is sculpting. Mm-hmm. So whenever I get to go in and use ZBrush, I'm super happy. So things that I do a lot of the times when I'm just creating textural details, things that'll kind of like give this nice impression of a fancy decor, but also not be too distracting. The architecture itself has to be art in a sense. Mm-hmm. And so figuring out all the modularity and all that stuff has been a very cool experience for me. But what I've enjoyed most is, like you said, maybe doing some of the sculptures or thinking about some of the things that are a bit more unique details that aren't necessarily strictly architectural, mm-hmm. but are something that were done as a flourish. Just kind of like, you see a lot of that when you look through estates and mansions and palaces and stuff through history. There's so much over-the-top stuff. It's like how much time, money, artistry, and talent was used for this one little thing. It's mind-boggling, and we don't want to do too much of that in our world. We want it to be, we want to make sure it feels pretty utilitarian, but the estates are kind of the opportunity to go over the top, and so that's where I've had the most fun.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate you guys giving me a tour and letting me see what you're working on and sharing some of this information with everybody else. So
we've been happy to have you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.